Welcome back. The world's population reached the 7 billion mark today, and a baby girl in Uttar Pradesh became the 7 billionth baby. Nargis shares the honors with a Filipina girl born at Manila Hospital shortly after midnight. Nargis is now the new symbol of women's rights. Here's the story.
A mother's bundle of joy, but Nargis is no ordinary child. She's the world's 7 billionth baby, and the family has enough reason to cheer.
मतलब कि हमारी बेटी हुई ना, आज सुबह हमारी 7:20 पे हमारी बेटी हुई, इसीलिए मैं इतना खुश हूँ कि कभी जिंदगी में खुश भये नहीं हूँ। मतलब आगे के लिए मैंने ये सोचा कि अपने बच्ची को पढ़ाएंगे लिखाएंगे, उसको डॉक्टर बनाना आगे बढ़ के कि डॉक्टर बनाएंगे हम।
Nargis was born on Monday at a community center in little-known Danor village near Lucknow at 7:20 a.m. Nargis is the first child of 23-year-old Vinita and 25-year-old farmer husband Ajay. Child rights organization PlanINdia celebrated birth of Nargis as a symbol of women's rights.
And as a child rights organization working on the issue of female for prevention of female feticide, we thought it's an opportunity not just to celebrate the birth of 7 billion child, but to celebrate a girl child. So it's a symbolic gesture for us,
because we wanted to focus on the issues which are around the girl children, because as we know in India the child sex ratio is skewed and the girls are every passing census the sex ratio is declining. So that is how we want to flag off this issue on this occasion in Uttar Pradesh.
Soon after, the local chief health officer handed out birth certificates to Nargis and 6 others as locals joined the celebrations. But at 1.2 billion, is India's population a bane or a boon?
The birth of the 7th billion child is definitely a cause for celebration. But if there is concern, the concern has to be one, that we must now deliver much better all the basic needs that people need. It is completely unacceptable that more children die out of dirty water in India than anything else. This is not because we have too many people, but because we completely mismanage our systems of delivery.
Demographers say it took until 1804 for the world to reach its first billion people, and over a century more until it hit the 2 billion mark in 1927. But by 1998, it had reached 6 billion. UN estimates the world's population will reach 10 billion by the year 2083.
So while Manila has been recognized by the UN as a place where 7 billionth baby has arrived, this place near Lucknow claims to be witness to its own baby number 7 billion. Although the organizers steer clear of the controversy by saying this is only symbolical and to create awareness for the girl child. With camera person Harish Kantpal, this is Amir Haq in Mall Village near Lucknow for Headlines Today.
The birth of the 7 billionth baby on planet Earth. The birth of a baby, the birth of Nargis, cause for concern or something to celebrate? Well, the birth of any child is reason to celebrate. We celebrate birth. But in this time on planet Earth, can we afford 7 billion and counting? That's the big question. And joining me now to discuss this is Dr. Pranab Sen, former Chief Statistician of India, Sunita Narayan, Director CSC, Dr. Dinesh Agrawal, Senior Program Officer of the UNFPA, Dr. Mala Kapoor Shankardas, Health and Development Social Scientist. With me also in the studio is Professor Pushpesh Pant, School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University. Dr. Pant, let me begin with you. 7 billion and counting. Reason to celebrate, cause for concern.
I think it's both, partly both. You know, if you have the clock ticking before you, you drive past the AIMS and you see how the Indian population is growing, burgeoning, I think this is cause for concern. But if you are celebrating life, I find this particular news a bit ridiculous and hilarious at the same time. Who decides and how politically correctly is a girl child born in a village to a minority community and it carries the right messages all along? She is immediately being sponsored and adopted by celebrities who will get mileage out of this. No, I think, you know, why do we worry worry about at the same moment about the infant mortalities which have taken place in West Bengal in hospitals? Why are we not celebrating life or being concerned about the quality of life where people are committing suicide due to malnutrition, due to rural indebtedness? Is only a child life is the God's message to mankind? To quote Tagore or paraphrase, he has not lost faith in humanity. I think this is, it is convenient that the 7 billion child is born the day Formula 1 is not there to distract it from the newspaper headlines. The bails have all been settled properly and nicely.
Okay.
Anna Hazare's bond is going to be broken, and you have a niche for this news.
Okay, let me put this question to Sunita Narayan. Sunita Narayan, is this fair criticism that 7 billionth baby just too convenient, born to a particular, in a particular scenario, something to celebrate or a serious cause for concern?
You know, I think Pushpesh is in his usual self, I think making too much of this issue. The fact is this is symbolic. I mean, 7 billionth baby is important to raise the issue that on one hand, it's important to raise the issue that we need to make sure that as the world's population increases, that we, particularly in India, remember that we have to make sure that we provide basic services to our people, that it's completely criminal that more children die today because of dirty water than anything else, that our maternal mortality rate is a shame. I think all those issues are something that it's only one way to put that back on the table and say, for God's sake, let's implement what we believe needs to be done. On the other hand, there is the larger issue where I am very clear as an environmentalist, I am not concerned about the 7th billion baby being born. Because for me, the issue is not about population, but about consumption. If you look at the consumption of the richest in the world versus the poorest of the world, it's very clear that the rich today are overusing the resources, wasting the resources.
Okay.
So if at all the birth of the 7th billion baby must help us to remember that it's time we understood that the earth is finite, the earth has limited resources, but that does mean that we learn to share better, we learn to live within the resources, which means the rich of the world must stop the F1 races and everything else that happens, which is just gross and completely...
Okay, and F1 races gross, maybe gross for some, reason to celebrate for others. Dr. Pranab Sen, your Principal Advisor, Planning Commission, the birth of the 7 billionth baby, I mean, is this a major population explosion? Resources, as Sunita Narayan was saying, are finite. They're not infinite. Already, there are water wars or talks of water wars. Will this worsen in the times to come? Food is not infinite. Resources are not infinite. Major cause for concern?
No, I think Sunita put it rather well. I mean, at the end of the day, it is how you and to what extent you consume the natural resources that we have inherited, and how much of it are we going to pass on to the future generations. And, you know, there's already evidence that the intensity of resource usage is going down. And it's not a question of whether the 7 billionth baby has been born in India to a poor family or has been born in the United States to a rich family. That's not the issue at all. The issue is that as a race, are we or are we not in a trajectory where per capita consumption of natural resources go down significantly so that the sustainability of our environment is going to be preserved for forever? That really is the issue.
Okay.
To my mind, it's a cause to celebrate.
It's a cause to celebrate, no doubt. Dr. Agrawal, look at what's happening not just in Delhi or Mumbai or metros around our country. Rural population migrating to urban centers. There is a major stress on everything that's anywhere there. There is no proper development that seems to be happening. In a scenario like this, there is a population explosion, as many would say. And the way the world population is growing, there would be more stress on these resources. Would this lead to more conflict in the times to come?
Well, I tend to disagree with the term population explosion. Of course, migration is happening, but migration per se is not bad. We need to plan for the migration. People are coming from rural areas to urban areas in search of jobs, in terms of livelihoods, and we need to plan for that. At the same time, we need to really plan for the jobs in rural areas. I remember our earlier president talked of Pura. providing same amenities as in urban areas and rural areas. We need to think with those directions so that those services, those amenities are made available in rural areas so that people don't migrate. But we need to plan for migration in advance.
Okay, unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be happening. Dr. Mala, we saw in China, to curb population growth, they went on a one-child norm. Is it time for India to look at Hum Do Hamara Ek?
I personally feel we need to always celebrate life. We need to give people opportunities to grow, and birth of a child is a growth. And we need to look at it not in terms of curbing people's rights, reproductive rights, but rather looking at ways where we make them realize that excess can be bad and tell them to plan their things the way they want to and provide enough resources for their utilization. Education and awareness can generate a thinking which can contribute to a person's well-being. And everybody who looks after their own health and well-being realizes that any burden on them could be harmful.
But is that actually happening, Dr. Pant? Look at the pressure on hospitals. We're talking about lack of facilities in hospitals, not just in Delhi, not just in Gorakhpur, not just at the BC Roy Memorial Hospital in Kolkata. It's the same story everywhere. You don't have enough resources. You have so much population. You have so many people coming into these hospitals. And the doctors say we just can't cope.
Oh, well, I think, Gaurav, I would like to stick to my old ridiculous position if others feel it that way. I do think that this child being born, no one should resent anybody getting a firstborn child. But it's also conveniently the firstborn child. It could have been the sixth child. It could have been the wrong gender. It could have. But what Dr. Sen says, it is not a question of a child being born in India or America is not unimportant. Because here we have larger numbers, greater pressures, and greater demands for social justice and equity. Now, what happens is that it's all very nice to say that the resources of the planet Earth are finite and there should be greater awareness and equitable distribution and justice, as Sunita very rightly says so. But in real life terms,
it's not happening.
It's not, whether it's the hospitals, the school, job opportunities, nutritional possibilities, within the family, entitlements and apportionments are going to change because of numbers. And I think we have never gotten over the trauma of forced sterilizations during the emergency, and we don't want to talk about family planning. We call it welfare, and we say people's reproductive rights should be respected. People's other rights need to be respected as well, of freedom of expression, of speech, when this country is severely threatened. The enshrined rights for liberty, which seem to be in provisions of bail being flouted every day. There are different laws for rich and the poor. So I think the rights cannot be separated. If we are talking of reproductive rights, other fundamental rights, other human rights should also be put on the table for discussion.
And Sunita, look at the pressure on resources that we see in our country. It's not just about hospitals, it's about schools, it's about traffic on the streets. There's no water, there's very little there's shortage of food. Let me just quote to you some facts that our team's been able to get together. 1.2 billion people do not have enough to eat. That's more than the population of the US, Canada and the European Union. These are FAO statistics.
And we have rotting food. And we have rotting food. And we have a large... No, Gaurav, I mean, you can quote statistics, but I think the basic fact is very clear. We have definitely too many people on the roads, but we have 90% of the people, the road space is occupied by cars. Only 14% of the people travel by cars. The rest still travel by bus. I think we should move away from... I'd like to make two specific points here. One, let's be very clear that yes, population is obviously going to be an issue. I agree with what Pushpesh is saying. The rights of everything have to be accepted. But let's also be very clear that the only way the world knows, other than China, forced sterilization, the only other way, which is the humane way to deal with population, is to really look at women, to look at women's empowerment, and to look at poverty removal. The only time, successful time, that people actually do birth control is when you have conditions in which people don't end up losing so many children, at infant mortality, when people are secure in terms of their income in the future, and when girls are literate, when they are educated. Those are very clear fundamental prerequisites for birth control. And the second thing, let's be very, very clear. Yes, population is an issue, but please do not excuse the complete incompetence of government in delivering basic services today because of population. It's nothing to do with sheer numbers. It's just incompetence. And complete callousness that you cannot get health care, water, clean water to people or education. It's nothing to do with the numbers of people. Why can't we get clean water? We cannot get clean water because we plan so badly, we execute so badly. So there's no excuse for that.
Okay, Dr. Pranav Sen, Principal Advisor Planning Commission, would you like to respond to this? It's not just population, it's extremely poor planning and execution of those plans. The government's failed yet again.
Well, the point is that what Sunita is saying is not disputable. There is a governance issue, but there's also an issue of misdirected resources. As a country, we spend too little on healthcare. As a country, we spend too little on our basic civic amenities. Now, these have to be corrected, and that can only be done by a reallocation of the budgetary resources we have. But what I would really like to draw your attention to, and this is something we tend to disregard in these discussions, is we are looking at the birth of a baby and asking the question whether we are having a population explosion. If you really look at the growth of population, it is not because birth rates are high. It is because death rates have gone down. Now, would you change the nature of discourse? Because if you do not, then you please accept the fact that as the average longevity goes up, even if you bring down the birth rate substantially, the population will continue to increase. This is an unfortunate fact of arithmetic.
Okay, so in a scenario like this, Dr. Agrawal, is it time for India to do a China? Should India actually focus on one-child families? Is that a better idea?
Surely not. I don't think this is a better idea in the context of India. We have surveys after surveys telling us very high unmet need for contraception. These are the people, the couples who are literally knocking on your door and waiting for services to be made available. And as what it was highlighted earlier, our spending on health is only 1% of GDP. I think we need to make huge investments for the adolescent health because we have the largest cohort of adolescent and young people in this country. We are talking of reaping the demographic bonus. How do we reap the demographic bonus unless we invest on the health, education of adolescents and the life skills development?
Okay. Dr. Mala, again a piece of statistics that I have here. In India, with 1.46 billion population in the year 2025, we'll have maximum population more than China. Clearly, the UNFPA says not enough resources to look after its population.
Yeah, but as it has already been pointed out, I think we need to look at the population as a resource. We need to look at it in terms of the development component. We need to manage it and use it as a resource and not look at it as a burden. I mean, clearly we need to look at distribution of our resources and equal rights over consumption and distribution of resources. I mean, if we start looking at our population as a burden, there's no end to things. And like Professor Sen has said that, then we need to change our argument and look at even our longevity issues in a different way. I think it is important that we keep celebrating life and we provide the right amount of or the right appropriate services, development, and cash in on this demographic bonus and not look at it as a burden.
Okay, and academically, I mean, theoretically, this sounds outstanding, and you're absolutely right. This is what should happen. But Dr. Pant, on ground, this is not happening. We talk about a very young population in India, India being extremely proud of its young population. But where are the jobs for that young population? And because you don't have jobs for this young population, this is again leading to more strife.
I think, Gaurav, the point was very well made by Sunita, who says that it is a question of basically focusing on consumption and focusing on distribution of scarce resources. We don't have jobs for for a burgeoning population, because this government, in its infinite wisdom, follows an economic development model which accents on IT and BT, concentrates on running down agriculture, concentrates on not worrying about, unless it becomes a politically volatile issue, about environment. And if you are bent upon encouraging consumption of bottled water marketed by multinationals, surely your priority is not potable water for the masses. If you keep up with the more affluent Joneses, want to organize Formula 1 races, host Commonwealth Games, and have corruption large scale in trying to modernize telecom penetration and have the consumer base increase regardless of the social cost, you are not going to have jobs for the masses. You are not, if you are systematically dismantling the public distribution system, the public health delivery system, the public transport system, the communication system, obviously you are not going to have either employment generation or you are going to have social services.
So Dr. Sen, would you agree with this argument that population growth is not a matter of concern, that can continue perhaps the way it is? Does it need to be checked? Is the fault entirely at the government's doorstep? Can we lay it completely on the government's doorstep?
Well, you know, anything can be laid at the government's doorstep, I mean, if you try hard enough and if your ideology so demands. So let's not get into that argument. But what we do need to be clear about is that in order for us to be a country that we can be proud of, every citizen has to be able to access the basic amenities of life and living. This is a responsibility of the country. The government is only instrumentality of the people. Now,
no, but is
whether
it
is this government or that government, wait. Is it the government's job? No. It is the job of everybody taken together. It is the job of the private sector. It is the job of civil society. You know, the unfortunate tendency to believe that it is the job of some people to agitate and other people to provide is a little unfortunate. And this is something we need to pull together. There is no question about the governance deficit that people talk about, but that can't be fixed simply by pointing fingers.
Okay. Dr. Mala, rapid urbanization, environmental degradation, skyrocketing demand for healthcare, education, resources, all this, I'm told, in the times to come will only increase problems.
No, I don't think so. It will increase problems because I think if our emphasis is more on well-being and if our emphasis is more on management of our resources, if our emphasis is on how to have the services reach people, then the issues can be dealt with quite differently. But if our emphasis is on too many people, too much burden, unequal distribution and consumption and unequal, migration policies which are harming some people and helping, I think we need to just change our attitude towards things. We need to look at our solutions at a different level and not at the level of curbing population or stopping people from having more kids or things like that. I think our emphasis has to be how are we going to see to it that if a person has one child or two children, that they live well and live long, the women's health is taken care of, that she's satisfied with her two kids and doesn't want a third kid. And similarly, I mean, it's not just women's issue. I think it has to be both husband and wife deciding on the children's well-being. We lay too much emphasis on one side of the thing, and I think that tilts the picture in a not a very comprehensive manner, which is well-being and development.
How does this happen? How does this happen on ground, in a debate, in a discussion? It sounds nice. Practically, how can it be translated into life?
Rahul, you're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you, Sunita, and Gaurav, yeah.
Gaurav, no, I think Gaurav, let's be very clear. There are two parts to this debate. One is, should we celebrate or should we worry about the birth of the child? I think from all that we're hearing is very clearly, we're all saying that there is a cause of celebration. The cause for concern is simply the fact that, one, we need to make sure that the governance deficit that exists is fixed, and two, We know that there will be an issue of how we will develop, because there are finite resources, there will be a burden on water resources, on land, as you said, but it will all be determined by the way we use water, the way we manage our water, and the way we distribute it. Now, if this is said, there is argument, as you have very correctly said, well, how will this happen? How will we actually deliver? And if we don't, won't we add to problems? I think that's a very fair issue, but that's what all of democracy is all about. That's what everyday political debates are all about, discussions on TV are about. Every crisis is one other way of saying we need to do better. I think the country has to push, keep asking. We must keep demanding much more. But I think the largest message that I would like to leave you with today is that the birth of the 7th billion child is important for the world to remember that it is not possible for us to live within one earth unless we can do things differently. You took the example of traffic on the roads. It's my favorite thing to say that if you have more people on buses, we will survive. But more cars, we will completely blow up this earth in America or in India. So it's very important for us to think carefully about that.
And for the government to deliver. You've actually summarized it very well. I don't need to do that. But for the moment, Sunita Narayan, Dr. Pranab Sen, Dr. Agrawal, Dr. Mala Kapoor Shankardas and Dr. Pushpesh Pant, many thanks for joining me here on Center Stage. Well,